Hey everyone, we're going to look at reaction mechanisms, or what I like to think of as it's the dance. So, molecules go from being reactants to products, and they don't just suddenly disappear and reappear as products. There's a dance that they undergo. The atoms have to exchange and swap and circle and do all sorts of crazy things, and eventually you've got products. So, it's kind of like cooking, right? So, you've got a recipe, but the actual doing the recipe and actually making the food is the interesting things. So, there's always a series of simple reactions that have to take place for an overall reaction. And so this series of simple reactions, okay, we call the elementary reactions. And this overall thing we call the mechanism. So this is the actual way the reaction takes place. So for instance, there's an overall reaction for the decomposition of ozone that looks something like this. So 2 ozone molecules eventually turn into 3 oxygen molecules. This would be like the recipe or the ingredients, but the way it actually takes place is via the mechanism. And so these are the individual chemical reactions. These are the elementary reactions that have to take place. And it's a 2-step mechanism. And so in the first step, an ozone molecule gets enough energy to actually shake itself apart. It actually breaks down and makes an oxygen molecule and an oxygen atom. And in the next step, this oxygen atom can encounter another ozone molecule and can rip off an oxygen and turn it into 2 oxygen atoms. And overall, these are the steps. Overall, these are the elementary reactions that take place to produce this overall chemical reaction up above. Now, if you notice this, there's actually a couple of things in the mechanism that don't appear in the overall reaction, and that is things like the oxygen atoms. So the oxygen atoms are actually made in one step and they're consumed in the other, but they're not in the overall, in the stoichiometric equation here. So what are they? And actually, they are what we call intermediates. Those are things that sort of fleetingly appear and disappear, and they kind of mediate the reaction, but they're not present before and they're not present after typically. So they're neither reactant nor product. So that's pretty cool, huh? So a very simple reaction like this actually takes place in a complicated set of 2-step elementary reactions. Now, also notice this isn't always true, but it's often true for the simple mechanisms that if you sum together the 2 elementary reactions, if you sum together all the reactions in the mechanism, you get the overall stoichiometric equation. So in this case, you can see the intermediates essentially cancel out, and so you got 2 O3s going to 3 O2 molecules. So we've looked at the mechanism for a simple reaction here, and I think that there's a couple of interesting things. One is that this tells us actually what's going on. So as scientists, we should always be interested as to why things are happening. But the second thing is we can actually use the mechanism to come up with and predict the overall rate of reaction, the rate law. So remember earlier, right, we said that the rate law is something you got to do experiments to figure out. Well, now we can actually take a mechanism and we can postulate what the rate law should be from a mechanism. The really nice thing, of course, is that if our predicted rate law from the mechanism matches the experimental rate law, that's suggestive evidence that our proposed mechanism is correct. Of course, it could just be a coincidence, and that's always a possibility we have to face as well. But let's go ahead and look how we would figure this out.